Thank you very much, Joan. It's wonderful to be back here in Lagranisi, and I think I struggled a little bit when I was thinking about this panel, particularly given the content we've already heard throughout this conference. But I do want to echo the fantastic progress that's been made over the last 10 years. You can see that in our ratings and everything that's happened. But the focus today is more about that kind of sectoral opportunities and where do we see things, particularly over the near term, which for us is probably more 12 to 18 months. We have these things at Moody's that we call industry sector outlooks, or ISOs. And most of the time, they're global, because most of the work we do is across global markets, the globally competitive firms that we assess. And they've actually moved quite a long way since the start of this year. There's 17 of them, and back in January, I think we had about 7 that were positive and only 2 or 3 that were negative. So that's where we're saying these are the sectors that are going to do well, and these are the sectors that are going to find challenges, particularly over the near term. That has moved a very long way. So as of today, we only have 2 sectors that are positive globally. One is diversified information technology, which ties into all of the debate around data centers and AI and everything else we've been talking about. The other is aerospace and defense. Now, of those 2 sectors, I think sometimes we overlook the fact that, particularly in a European context, Greece does have a lot of experience and, frankly, some advantages compared to some other European countries in the defense sector. So that strikes me as one which we maybe skate over a little bit, but it's really, really important. And when you think about the broader global context with geopolitics and Greece's strategic location, that feels like an area of opportunity for me. But I also want to flip it a little bit, because we could talk again about digitalization and green transition and energy, everything else this conference has been doing. But in an effort to try and be slightly original, I was going to pick out 2 other sectors. Firstly, I think the key message that I've heard here and from other events around Europe, there's a lot of thought and concern around AI and the impact on jobs and the impact on people. But I think the key ingredient in terms of preserving and creating jobs is going to be skills. So again, we're talking about the university sector there for me, where I think, again, Greece has a relative comparative advantage. It does not mean that sector does not need to innovate. And we're already seeing that globally, particularly with some of the large US universities. The UK is catching up a bit in terms of the digital offering that you have there. Why can't Greece do that? And that would bring in not just external revenues again, but it would also help address some of the skills gaps and support the population. The second one is a little bit more of a leap, but bear with me. One of the big stories of the last 10 years is, well, really the last 6 or 7 years, is the transformation of the banking sector, and in particular the massive reductions in non-performing loans. You will have views on that, I'm sure. But we need to recognize that's been achieved by a combination of securitization of non-performing assets and asset sales. Why am I going on about those? Well, because the biggest growing sector in terms of financing investment and supporting the economy in the US is this thing called private credit. And that's a way for essentially non-bank lending to grow and thrive, and particularly to support smaller businesses. And a lot of the structures that we see in private credit in the US have echoes of that kind of perspective of asset sales and management and securitization. So in an effort to say something new, I think I would just add skills and maybe private credit as areas that might be worth exploring. But I'll leave it there.